What's going on, fragrance family? Welcome to the Road Zoe channel. I'm your host, Mark. Today we are doing a test drive Thursdays, and this is on the brand of Orto Parisi, and this one called Stercus. Always fun to dissect or talk about an Orto Parisi or Nasomato fragrance. Honestly, anything from Galtieri, and he gets a lot of flack, like as a nose, his branding. A lot of people dislike his releases, really, synthetic fragrances, they all smell alike, blah, blah, blah. If you follow any perfumier, any nose, even some of the best, like Jean-Claude Elena, you are going to sense that there's a little bit of déclaration from Cartier into Terre d'Hermès. There is some Terre d'Hermès into Bigarade Concentré from Frédéric Malle, from Elena, and he just, some call it recycling, but really it is a lot of their signature. A lot of notes that these noses utilize or things that they utilize to make their compositions they're comfortable with. And really, if it is a unique composition as far as what's around that, I have no issues with it. I like different ideas from certain noses, and I do like them going a little crazy. Now with Galtieri, you spend sometimes a lot of your time dissecting his marketing, as much as you're dissecting the scent. I absolutely love everything that he does. The name of the fragrance, even the caps of these Orto Parisis are different. The juice color to obviously the marketing behind it. You're spending so much time just looking at it and going, oh, look at this little thing. And there's little hidden gems everywhere. Honestly, I think he's a marketing genius because he utilizes shock value to get attention to his brands. And he has done that from Black Afgano to a lot of his Nasomatos have different caps to them. Some that are quite unique to the name of the fragrances, to you name it. So the name Stercus here in Latin means feces, poop. So there's your marketing ploy right here for this particular fragrance. Now people are either going to just totally ignore it, which I think is a mistake, to really interested in it because it's unique. Now here, this one is inspired from his childhood memory, spending time in his grandfather's garden. The imagery from, if that is correct, the imagery is bang on in my opinion. This scent isn't overly green as you're thinking of like just a regular garden, but it's woody, it's earthy, you smell a little bit of that fertilizer. It reminds me actually, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but it just reminds me of the dirt in your nails after working a long hard day in a garden or in a farm. Stercus plays between the repulsion of scent and attraction of scent. And when you get into this journey as far as I have, you'll start getting into more challenging, daring scents, and it really just, sometimes it takes you aback, but at the same time it really challenges you and you keep wanting more. And I'm sure you have done that in your life, that there's maybe a scent or something, not specific to fragrances, but just a scent in your home or somewhere, and you're just like, and then you come back to it and you're like, oh, it's actually kind of interesting. So Stercus really plays those strings a little bit of repulsion versus attractiveness. The user smells something repulsive but comes back for more. And I think Galtieri really played that string really well here. So I'm really excited to delve into Stercus. I think it's one of his better releases for the Orto Parisi line. So let's get into it. First of all, let's get onto the sponsor of the day, FragranceX.com. I did want to take the time to thank them for Stercus. You can get a bottle of Stercus or many of the Orto Parisis on their website. Support me, check out Fragrance X, utilize my coupon code, which is my YouTube name, which is Robes08. You put that in their coupon section and you get 15% off on your purchase, and you're helping me out at the same time. Now let's go under the hood. Let's take a look at some stats on this one. Release date was back in 2014. So next year it's going to hit its 10-year anniversary. The nose, Alessandro Galtieri. Major notes, of course, Orto Parisi and Nasomato. They don't publish the notes. To me, this is a oud-based fragrance. That is the central theme. It is the backbone of Stercus, but there's a lot of notes that there's complexity there, but there isn't at the same time. It's very linear as a scent. I don't see much movement out of Stercus, but at the same time, oud is major, and then the other notes are really, it's just a handful. You can go with anything, and I'm going to go with tobacco. Tobacco is a player in here, and so is patchouli, but you can go with a vanillic note in here, a leather note in here, that are major, but I think oud is basically your pillar in this, and everything else is surrounding it. So the opening of Stercus, let's sniff it out. It is my scent of the day today, but I do want to remind myself of the introduction. The introduction of Stercus, with the marketing and everything, surprised me, but it didn't at the same time. There's a lot of things that are surprising in this release. The opening of Stercus and starts off exactly how I like my dark Galtieri fragrances. It's dry, lots of woods. He utilizes lots of woods. There is some earthy aspects here. Patchouli's coming into play. There's some sweetness, which is very, I'd say, surprising as far as what people were reviewing this thing. And there's a little pinch of fecal in this release, just a bit. I can tell immediately this is an oud-based fragrance. It is going to be the platform that Stercus will be based upon. The oud will shine throughout the scent and will never leave. It is an oud-based release. It's a staple note for Galtieri. He utilizes oud quite a bit, so I'm not surprised. The one thing about Stercus is that it's faintly pushing the envelope, and it just does it very, very minor. You'll notice some reviews talk about poop or animalics to Stercus, and certainly there's a portion of this release that up top that gives this idea, but it's fairly light. It's almost like you're searching for it, and what that does is it gives Stercus a little bit of a edge to it, and some noses may ruffle their noses to it for that exact piece of Stercus, and it's a small portion of it. Personally, I felt it was very minor, first of all, and it is one of the parts that really interests me. I feel like it's a piece of the puzzle that really made this, I'm not saying a boring scent, but it really gave it some interests. It gives the impression of fecal pieces, but isn't fecal, if that makes sense. It's not animalic, it's not cheesy, it's not, it just gives you that impression. It's very minor. The one thing that I am going to say about that portion of Stercus is that it leaves the scent quite quickly. It mellows almost immediately, so it is something that if you dislike it, it is in the introduction, but it will die down and actually be gone in minutes. So that is one thing, but it's there. And some people that are saying that it's not there, it's there. It's definitely there. And it's most likely either he utilized an animalic or it's in the oud, which I wouldn't be surprised. Another stigma with Stercus is that it is highly compared to his all-star release, Black Afgano, which I honestly, while I've been reviewing Orto Parisis throughout my journey, I feel like almost every Orto Parisi has been compared to Black Afgano, at least the darker ones. The one thing with Galtieri is that if you're used to his releases, like many artists, they will utilize components that they've used in the past. So I believe he gets a lot of flack, actually a lot more flack than a lot of other noses out there. And honestly, there is some Black Afgano pieces in here, but hardly as close as people dub this as being really close to Black Afgano. Honestly, I smell a lot of different Orto Parisis that were before this one. I smell a lot of parts of them in here and other Nasomatos, not only Black Afgano in this composition. So honestly, there's a lot of pieces in this release that do smell like others, other components. So it's not directly relegated to being a Black Afgano comparison. So it doesn't honestly need to be compared just to Black Afgano. You can list off maybe several in the whole criteria of Orto Parisi and Nasomato to this one, and you'd be kind of correct. The one thing that really did shock me with Stercus as far as the opening goes was that there was actually quite a bit of sweetness in this release. I was not expecting that. I was thinking dark, earthy, woody scent with some animalics, and really there's a good addition of sweetness in here. I wasn't expecting that. It's a vanillic sweetness, so it's a vanillic punch up top, and that vanillic punch doesn't really go away. I was not expecting that vanillic touch in Stercus up top and throughout the scent, and it will punch up a bit. Like, it's I would say not a minute part, but it is a piece of the I would say a secondary note, this vanillic sweetness up top. I mean, it really is really dry, dark, and all that. But the more this thing dries down, the more vanillic touch comes up and amps up. I mean, it really does work well with the rest of the dark composition, but it was interesting to see some sweetness here. There's also a floral component in Stercus, and I feel like it's heliotrope. I might be wrong because I get tons of almond. There is some nuttiness in Stercus, which is very interesting, and it really is a welcomed addition to this release. So it runs throughout the introduction to the mid. This almond can be from a tonka bean note. It could be there's a tonka bean note because there's some vanillic sweetness, of course, in here, and there is some powderiness, but very light. So heliotrope, tonka bean ish, but let's go with heliotrope just for the sake of it. There's also a soft sandalwood note here that is helping to soften the scent. It really balances it well more into the mid, into the dry down. Now there's a little dark fruity aspect to a dry tobacco note here too in Stercus that joins after the initial punch. The fruit isn't major. It really isn't big in here. A lot of reviews are saying that this smells like plum. To me, it's not plummy at all. It's just a dark fruity note. For just fun's sake, I think it's more of a cherry hookah-like vibe. Perhaps the cherry from a tonka bean. But there is a tobacco-like vibe here. There's a mild smoky aspect here, but it isn't too bold. Like smoke, when you're talking about smoke and Nasomato or Orto Parisi, you got to be careful. It's very minute, but it is very nice. There's a chocolatey patchouli here that comes into more into the mid that gives the scent an earthy quality, which I felt comes in and out of the fragrance and gives the scent some green aspects, which again then goes into, okay, this is getting compared to Black Afgano. I understand why, because there's green aspects in both fragrances. It's not a cannabis-like greenness like BA. This is more of an earthy patchouli greenness that you're getting. Now, the back end of Stercus is more about the tobacco, the woods, the patchouli, and now a mild leathery note with some sweetness and some nuttiness coming in and out of the scent. There's also that signature musk that Galtieri likes to end scents with, which does end Stercus. Overall, it gets woodier with time. The earthy patchouli comes up a bit, the sweetness amps up a bit, and the signature musks come through. The dry down is much simpler than the opening. The opening is much more bold, I would say, and easier to sniff than that actual opening. So the dry down really, and we're getting into it here eventually, but yeah, once you get into like hour 3, 5, 7, 8, this thing really mellows, and it really isn't what the marketing tells you. A lot of people, when I was wearing this, they smell the vanillic tendencies of this, the tobacco tendencies, the woody tendencies. They don't smell anything fecal off your skin at all. It is actually a well-blended fragrance, but there isn't much moving parts. I think this is like a 2-part fragrance. Like, you got that little bit of that fecal thing going on in the opening, and then it just mellows into this woody, leathery, tobacco, and then little nuances of patchouli, sweetness, all that good stuff. So Stercus, well balanced. Personally, I like the blend here. So overall, Stercus reminds me of dirty hands after working on the farm, including earth in your fingernails. Your hands may be a little funky, but after you wash it off, you'll lose some of the pungent pieces, but the earth is still there. The woody aspects do remain. So let's get into seasons, day-night versatility, and performance. Let's start off with seasons. Fall and winter is written all over this thing. I think start of spring, also this would work well. It's not as big, bold, and crazy as reviews say. So I really like the fall, you know, when the leaves fall down and it kind of gets wet outside and you are getting a little bit of rain. Spring and fall, these tweener months would really work well with this one. But again, the winter too. Day or night, I feel like this is more of a nighttime scent. I think the gloomier it is, the better this thing works. Versatility, below average. I feel like there is some restraints to it. Not all noses will enjoy this type of scent as far as your personal taste. Performance. Longevity, again, it's people like to say these Orto Parisis and these Nasamados always beast mode. It's like the blueprint. Well, longevity is good. You're going to get 7 to 10 plus hours. It's not a 36-hour thing, but there is some good longevity here, very good longevity. Projection is average. I didn't feel like this was a bomb. It's not beast mode for me, but you are going to get noticed. Most people get, again, like I was saying, the sweetness, the woods and the tobacco additions in this release than the other things. But you are getting very good performance. So I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not beast mode. Like every Nasamato or Orto Parisi has to be beast mode. It's not, but 10 plus hours is good performance and you're getting average projection. Final thoughts on Stercus. Stercus, I enjoy these kind of little test drives. You know, I'm wearing it for several days and kind of give you my thoughts on it. Full-fledged reviews. I don't think there's going to be much more to add to Stercus as far as full-fledged reviews. I like to look at the little nuances and where they come from. So it's something that I'm going to have fun with, to play with. But my final thoughts are the marketing of this release is much more scary than the actual scent. The comparisons online to Black Afgano to Horsepoo are greatly exaggerated in my personal opinion. You do get a little bit of both, but Stercus reminds me of the brush strokes of many Nasamatos and Orto Parisis before Stercus came into light. And you do get some interesting pieces up top that may make you think of animalics, but honestly, once this dries down, you'll forget all about it. It's gone. It's a solid piece of the Orto line. I like this edition. It would be one that I would actually recommend to someone that's really starting to get into Galtiati fragrances. I think it would be one of the first ones that you should sniff. It tells you a lot about the nose here and where he progressed at this point. If you haven't smelled anything from Orto Parisi, this would be one that I would recommend. He kind of tried to push the boundaries just a little bit here, and I think it's his best work with the note of oud per se. So if you haven't smelt anything from him yet, this is a very solid release in my opinion to check out from the brand. Now I'm done with Stercus. It's time for you to hit us up in the comments below. What do you think of it? Good, bad, ugly? Do you agree, disagree? Love to read those comments. As always, a great pour fragrance will make a lasting impression. Choose your scent wisely. Thanks for watching, YouTube. Have a good one.